Here I have a 2011 Mustang GT. So as you can see, this is a non-Brembo car. What I'm going to be doing today is replacing the brakes, both the pads and the rotors, and then while they're off, I'm going to be painting the system. And then I'll also be doing a brake fluid flush once that's completed. And for this project, I'm going to use the Duplicolor MetalCast paint because I'm going for a deep purple and I couldn't find it. This one I've seen online comes out a lot more magenta. So what I'm going to be doing is doing a coat of the purple on the base. I'll do 1 to 2 coats of the blue, and then I'm going to do another coat or 2 of this on the top to try to really get that deep bluish purple look that I'm looking for. And then at the end, I'm going to be clear coating it just to try to protect it, have it last a little bit longer. So here I have my test piece of metal that I'm going to be trying the paint color out on before I actually put it on the car. That way if I don't like it, it's fine. It's just a scrap piece and it's not actually going to ruin the vehicle. So the test piece I already sprayed off with brake cleaner. As you can see, it's reasonably clean. It's degreased. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the primer, the base coat, and I'm trying to get a deep anodized purple. However, I've only seen that color for powder coating, and for the price of powder coating, I could have upgraded to a Brembo package. So money-wise, that just didn't make sense for me. I don't really track the car often enough to justify a Brembo upgrade, so I figured this would be a relatively cheap visual mod that I could do that was a good weekend project for me. So I just sprayed my test coupe on. I got that drying. In the meantime, I'm going to get this jacked up, get it in the air, and then start taking the wheels off. So you can see the first layer of the paint, the base coat is dry now. It's been about 15 to 20 minutes. It's also a fairly warm day out today. So now I'm going to apply the first coat. I'm going to do a base coat of purple, 2 blue, and then 2 more purple. We'll see how it comes out. So it's been enough time. You can see the purple coat's reasonably dry now. Again, it's not perfect coverage because I didn't do a good enough job cleaning this off. But now we're going to put the first coat of blue on. While you're doing all this, make sure you get yourself a bottle of water or Gatorade, something that has a resealable cap. 2 reasons for that. One is, first and foremost, hydration. Hydration's obviously key on a day like today where it's mid 90 degrees. And then second of all is when you're draining the brake fluid, you're going to want to drain it into some sort of a bottle, and then if you have a resealable cap, you can just cap it after and discard of it properly without having to worry about it spilling everywhere. You really don't want to get it on anything. Brake fluid, if you're not aware, does strip paint. It is a pretty nasty substance. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put on a nice second coat of the blue, and then I'll go back to the purple for a couple final coats. So to replace the rotors and pads on all 4 corners, what you're going to want to do is there's a bolt here and then down here in the back that attaches the caliper to this caliper bracket. You're going to remove those. All 4 corners are the same. Rears are obviously a little bit smaller, and then once you do that, you're going to remove the bracket for the caliper bracket itself, which is you get the bolts there and then down low on the back. It's pretty simple. It's very straightforward. Probably not going to be able to fit an impact gun back there, so you're going to have to do it by hand. It's not a huge deal. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and then we'll resume after that. Now the second coat of blue has been dried on it, so we're going to go back to the purple and do another couple coats with that, see how it comes out. So one thing I've noticed with this is the purple seems to come out noticeably heavier than the blue. I don't know if that's just because it's a more full can or what, but that just seems to be my personal experience right now. Purple are dry. It's a very reflective paint, which I kind of expected. So what I'm going to do is the final coat of purple and try clear coating after. The second top coat of purple is now dried, and this is actually just about the color I was looking for. Looks pretty purple in that light. You put it in the sun a bit, you just see a hint of the blue. It's pretty much spot on what I had in mind. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit it with the clear coat just to try to see how it looks when it's sealed up, make sure I still like it with this finish on it, and that'll add some protection. But if it dulls it out too much, if it kind of gets rid of that metallic flake, what I'll do is I'll just surpass this on the actual brakes. I'm gonna let this dry. We'll see how it comes out in a few minutes, and we'll go from there. If it looks good, I'll clean up the brakes and I'll put it on the car. More or less the exact color I was looking for. So I'm very happy with that. That is definitely the bluish purple tone I was looking for. It's got a little bit of different color based on how the light's going. The car looks like a simple color right now, but in the light it really pops. It's got more of a metallic fleck to it. So if you can see that sitting here, that's gonna look pretty damn good, especially with how this kind of changes the color, so does the car in the sunlight. So I'm very happy with it. I will be now pulling off my calipers and I will be painting them with this color combination and get it all back together, see how it goes. So the calipers are still draining a little bit. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean off the brackets. If you still got the old brakes in them, you can either press them out, or again, our friend the rubber mallet just pops them out real easy. To clean these out, what I'm using is a corded drill. I could do a cordless, but it's not going to be, I don't think the battery's going to last long enough. And I just got this, wire wheel here at the end, wire brush, whatever you want to call it. I'm just going to go clean up this as best as I can, and then once I do that, I'll move on to all the other ones, come back for the calipers after. Also keep in mind, make sure you don't hit any of these rubber boots. It's a good idea to tape them off ahead of time. My initial passes, I'm not really going to be coming close to those. You should also take off these retaining clips here on the insides, and once you do that, that's when you can really get going with the wire wheel. But again, be careful, you really don't want to hit that rubber boot. If you do, you're going to have to replace it. So you'll want to try a few different sizes. This brush is more for getting in here in these areas where it's a little more fine. I'm going to get an actual wheel one, and then I can hit it from the side, and then that'll clear this up a lot faster. Here are the after results. I've been working on this one for about 20 to 30 minutes. It is a while of prep time. So it's going to sit like this. I concentrated mostly on the areas that you're going to see from the outside of the car. So again, in there, it's not really perfect. Same with on the bottom. Got the caliper brackets all cleaned up. Those are inside. They're taped off for the rubber boots so you wouldn't hit them. And then now I'm going to start working on the calipers. Before I do that, I'm going to compress the caliper pistons. I don't have the clamp tool. It is much easier if you just have the clamping tool to compress the calipers. If not, you get a block, 2 clamps. You can use a round pipe and a hammer if you need to. I mean, there's a number of ways to do it. I'm just going to be clamping them down, compress these back in a bit, and then once that's done, I'll be taping them off and hitting them with the grinding wheel to clean these up, then I can get painting. So I'm going to get all 4 of these now. I'm going to skip the video part of it because no one really needs to see that. It has been almost exactly 2 hours. I have all 4 calipers done as well now. As you can see, the front ones noticeably lighter, definitely a different color than they were before. I believe these ones are aluminum on the Mustang, and these potentially aluminum, potentially steel, I'm not sure. These actually have some surface rust, so I'm inclined to think they're not aluminum. One thing is, when you're compressing the caliper on the rear, because the e-brake is built in, you have to screw this in. You cannot just compress it. So what I used for that is I have these bent nose pliers, and what I would do is just put them in there and twist. Obviously not this way, I grab it from the other side, but that's how you got to do, is screw it in and press down as you do so. This is more of what it should look like. That nice normal even shape is what you want. This one is a little bent. I did back it off a bit, but it's still not settled in properly because I left it there for too long. As for how clean the calipers are, again, you got a little bit of surface rust and stuff here, especially on the bottom side. A little bit of grit on the back. I'm not too worried about that. If you see how it sits on the car, it's going to be sitting like this. You get the bleeder valve here on the back. So from this angle, everything I reasonably need to paint is pretty clean, except for, you know, maybe a bit in there, but it's going to be on the back of the caliper bracket. So I'm not really too worried about that. It's good enough that I'm doing about 5 coats of paint. Because of that, this should all be covered quite nicely, and it should clean up really well. I've got about 4 cans of brake cleaner. I'm hoping to not need that much, but what I'm going to do is just clean these all off thoroughly with the brake cleaner, scrub them down with a wire brush if I need to, just hand brush them, And then once that's done, hang them up on a wire and then they'll be ready for paint. Here is my expertly arranged paint booth. It is just an old semi-working engine hoist, a couple wires, and then obviously all the calipers and brackets. So it's easier when you're spray painting to have them hanging up. That way you don't have to worry about rotating them, run lines, stuff like that. It's just much easier to do it this way. Again, make sure there's nothing around. If there's anything you're worried about getting hit, cover it. So I already sprayed these all down with brake cleaner. As you can see, they're pretty well degreased at this point. I used 2 full cans. Wait about 10 minutes or so, let them dry, and then we're going to hit them with a first coat of paint and go from there. Just rinse and repeat for all the coats you're doing. So I'm doing a base coat of purple, doing 2 coats of blue, and then 2 more coats of purple. Then I'll be clear coating it all. So it's the same process for all of that. So I'm not going to show it all, I'm just going to do it and I'll show you the end result and we'll go from there. Now I have all of the color coats applied. I put 2 coats of clear over the top. You can kind of see it's got a pretty good dynamic color when you put it in the sunlight, which is more or less exactly what I was looking for. So now what I'm going to do is put them on these trusty baking sheets, and rather than wait a week for the paint to cure, I'm just going to oven cure it for about 2 hours at 300 degrees. And that's to really seal it in. Before I do that, I'm going to take off all the masking, make sure there's no paint on any of the rubber boots, and that way it won't cure onto those. So here are my calipers and brackets post oven cure. As you can see, it's got that nice pearlescent effect to it. It's obviously not that pearlescent. There's just spots that are lighter and darker than others, and it kind of creates that really cool effect. So one thing I would caution about is I cooked it at about 300 degrees initially. You do see a little bit of bubbling. I would leave it at about 200 to 250 and just cure it for a bit longer. This bubbling is not a huge deal for me, but some people might mind it, so it's just a word of caution. If the brackets and calipers are all back on the car, all 4 corners, if you're taking everything off to paint it anyway, make sure you grease your caliper slides, you grease the back of the pads, get everything checked while it's off. In the front, there's a little bit of grease on the back side of the rotor right in there. You can see a little bit here on the seal as well. So I just touched that up. You don't necessarily need to, but I did it just for my own sanity, really. Same thing in the back. Make sure you install the e-brake hardware correctly, or else you'll have a hell of a time when your car starts rolling on you. But yeah, everything bolts right back up. It's fairly simple. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bleed the full brake system and then give it a test drive and bed the brakes a little bit. Brakes are now bled in all 4 corners. I got the wheels back on while it was up in the air. I did a transmission fluid flush as well. I went to Royal Purple Synthetic. Factory fluid is pretty much black at this point, so I think that was a good call. So just hand tighten these for now. I'm going to get it down on the ground and torque it back to spec, then go bed the brakes in.